Hello, speakers and leaders. Today we're talking all about how to tell better stories. You see, we no longer live in the survival of the fittest anymore. Nowadays, it's all about helping people get the ideas across, right? Whether you're in the boardroom, whether you are in a one-on-one meeting, maybe you're doing a presentation. Today, it is the one who can get the ideas across, who is the most convincing, confident, and clear. Those are the ones who knows how to be more successful and win at the end of the day. And one of the best way to do that is with one of the best state-of-the-art technologies we can use, and that is called storytelling. And today, I have a very special guest, Mr. Robert Kennedy III. Now, Robert is an expert in delivering messages with confidence, clarity, and credibility. Robert Kennedy III is the co-founder and president of Kennetik Communications. He is a serial entrepreneur and started his first business in 2001, an online music promotion portal with an internet radio station. He is an award-winning public speaker, corporate trainer, and author. His books include 28 Days to a New Me, 7 Ways to Know You Should Lead, and Find Your Voice, 28 Secrets to Help You Speak Up and Speak Out. Robert has a background in education, media, and radio. Through his training company, he works with leaders who need to deliver critical messages with confidence. He lives in the state of Maryland, where he has been featured on Fox and CW for his work around confident communication. And without further ado, Robert, come on up. Welcome.
Hey, good to be here, man. I need to hire you. I think I need a hype man to take on the road with me.
Hey, maybe we can all do that in the future nowadays. Just insert someone when you're about to begin.
There we go. Everything's in virtual, man. I'll just have you record the intro again, and then anytime I go live, I'll just play it. Ladies and gentlemen, Kit Pang introducing Robert Kennedy III, RK3. That's me. All right, here we go.
Hey, Robert, I'm so glad that you're here with us today. You know, our audience, they're professionals, they're leaders, they're entrepreneurs, and of course, you know, this is your bread and butter, right? Storytelling. Yeah. So actually, let's start with that question. You know, the title of today's show is how to tell better stories. Well, how does one actually do that?
Well, the easy answer, man, is you've got to tell stories. I think we've forgotten how to tell stories because we've gotten into a corporate workplace, or we've gotten into some situations where we feel like we've just got to give the information. We've got to give the raw data, and we forget how we connect. We forget about the emotional side of things. And really, people make decisions. People move to action, not simply because of data or not because of information that they receive, but because of emotion, right? If you think about certain things, that when you go house shopping, you make decisions based on an emotion. I remember buying our first house. In the process of buying our first house, my wife was pregnant at the time, and we were going from house to house to house to house to house. And we finally got to this one house, and my wife, she was tired of looking at the time. And she just sat down on the floor in the house and said, "Babe, let's just buy this one." and I looked at her and I said, "No, this isn't our house. This isn't our place." Because what I felt at the time was, as we looked at the master bedroom, I looked at the space in there, and immediately my mind said, you know what, we're going to get this house, but in 3 months, you're going to be trying to squeeze by the dresser, trying to squeeze by me, and we're going to be feeling like this was not the right place. So we got to keep moving. And we got to a house a couple of days later, and as soon as we walked in, there was the master bedroom didn't have exactly what we wanted, but there was a bedroom beside it, and we immediately saw that we could tear down a wall and create a larger room. And then everything else in the house outside of that thing just kind of met with our approval. We saw potential, and there was a feeling that we had, right? So there were houses that had bigger rooms, there were houses that had different places, but there was an emotion, there was a feeling that took place with this house, and that's how we made our purchase decision. And I think if you go back to all of the big decisions, or even the small decisions that you make, a lot of times we make those decisions based on a feeling. So storytelling does just that. It really creates the connection, it creates the emotion, it creates the feeling that by where people make decisions. And if you've got a small business, if you're a coach, if you're a service-based business owner, that's one of the big things that you've got to remember.
Now I have to ask you, what about, some people, they think, they're like, Robert, I don't have any stories. I'm
Yeah.
not a storyteller. I live a mundane life. What do you say?
Everybody has stories. Everybody has stories. It's simply about where you begin to look. And sometimes here's what happens with a lot of us. It's not that we don't have stories or we don't feel we have stories. We feel like our stories don't matter, or we feel like our stories don't measure up to the stories that others have. Right. So we look at motivational speakers, or we look at people on Instagram, and we look at people on Facebook or Snap or TikTok or wherever we are. And we look at their lives and we feel like their lives and their stories are more interesting than the ones that we have. And that's just not true. It really becomes about where you look for the stories in your life, right? And so one of the places that you can look for stories is, think about any challenge that you've had. Think about any time that you've had to overcome something, even something simple, right? What's a simple it might have been a test that you had to study hard for. It might have been a bill that you weren't sure how you could pay it, but you ended up being able to pay it. It might have simply been that time where you were on your sports team and your football team, and your team was behind in the fourth quarter, and there were 4 minutes left, and your team came from behind and they won. Everybody has stories that they can dig into. It's about being able to mine those stories and write them down, or put them in a place where you can then pull them from your Rolodex or recapture them at a moment's notice. And that's something else. That's kind of the practice of this, and having a story vault. But bottom line is, everyone has stories.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, right? Everyone has stories. They just have to, of course, know how to bring it out. But
Yeah.
what about you? Were you always a great storyteller? Like, how did you practice the art of storytelling?
Well, I don't know if I would say that I was always a great storyteller, or if that I recognized that I needed to tell stories. What I did recognize was that I needed to become a more compelling speaker. I needed to be able to get people's attention differently, especially once I started to grow in business, or once I decided to be an entrepreneur. So Toastmasters was one of the first places that I started really honing that skill of public speaking first. And then as I began to get better at the art of public speaking, then I said, okay, what do I need to do to take my public speaking to the next level? And that next level was really digging deeper into the art of storytelling. So what do you do there? Again, same thing that I just mentioned. What are some of the areas in your life that you can begin pulling stories from? And if you're having trouble with your life, maybe you start with the stories of others, right? Read autobiographies, read other articles, read things that share how others have overcome certain challenges, and begin becoming proficient at telling those stories, mastering the arcs of the story, mastering the emotions of the story. Where's the tension? Where's the climax in the story? Where does the story resolve? Mastering those things. And then when you're ready for that even next level emotion, then, or that next level of connectivity, then start looking at some of your own stories and how you can really begin to bring people into your space with those.
Yeah, I love how you talk about, the arc, the emotion side of things, and you talked about, like leveling up your storytelling. And
Yeah.
I know the one thing that you do talk about is something called signature talk, signature story. So what does that mean? What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So a signature story, there are a few different definitions for it. When I say a signature story, most people really immediately jump to, okay, a signature story is one story that you tell over and over and over again. And that's very true. That's very true. But a signature story is much more than just a story that you tell over and over again. David Aker, who was a researcher on storytelling and human connection, says that a signature story is a strategic asset, an inspiring asset that really is connected to a core belief or core value for an individual or even an organization. So a signature talk or a signature story is a story or a strategic asset that you use to bring people into a place of what you believe. Maybe your why, the thing that drives you, the thing that you're passionate about, why you do what you do, why you build your business. I mean, people who have a specific career. If you think back to what inspired you to be in that career, what inspired you to start that business, what inspired you to be in that specific line or that specific lane, then that is a signature story. That's a seminal moment that really creates this that connects to your belief system, that connects to your core value system. So it's important for us to have that and understand a signature story, because people buy why you do things. If you go back to Simon Sinek, Start With Why, or How Great Leaders Inspire Action, great TED Talk. If you've never seen that, go look that up on YouTube. One of the things that he says in that is people buy not what you build, but they buy why you have built it.
That's powerful, right? Well, since we're talking about signature stories, when it comes to signature stories, do you have examples? Our audience, they could be professionals working in a job. They could be leaders managing a bunch of different people, or let's say coaches or entrepreneurs. Are there different ways to use their signature stories if they are a professional working in an organization versus like a coach trying to sell something? Like, do you have any examples?
Yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of different ways. You can use your personal story as a signature story. You can also use the signature story of your organization as a signature story. Or if you're an organization, you can use what you view as the signature story or signature need of your customer. For example, how many people, I remember back in the early 2000s, if you wanted to listen to music, you were piling a bunch of CDs in your car, right? And if you had to go on a trip, like if you were a music lover like I was, you had hundreds of CDs. And so when you decided to go on a trip, you had to pick out and decide which CDs you wanted to take on this trip. Now, in the early 2000s, some devices came out where you could then take music and they would be on these digital files called MP3s. Now, if I were to ask you about the name of an MP3 player, some people could remember some other ones. But if I were to ask most people would say iPod, right? And why is it that people remember iPod? iPods were not the first MP3 player that came about. There were several others. I had a few. I had one that called my gosh, it was a Creative Solutions. I forgot the name of it. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I forgot the name of it, but I remember it was creative. I had another one called the iRiver H10. Right. I had another one called the Microsoft Zune. How many people remember that? Right. But the reason why people remember iPods was because they connected it to a signature feeling or signature thing that the customers were connected to. Okay. And so what they said at the time was, hey, would you like to have your music at a moment's notice? And they connected it to how music brings nostalgia, or music reminds us of certain things, and say, wouldn't you like to have that at a moment's notice? And wouldn't you like that to fit in the palm of your hand and go with your natural human motion? And that was kind of that reference to that scroll wheel in the center of the iPod, which worked a little bit different than all of the different buttons on some of the other MP3 players. And so they connected and they told that story over and over and over and over again. While other companies were just saying, hey, we've got MP3 players. You can have all of your songs in the same place. They weren't just saying, hey, you can have all your songs in the same place. They were connecting it to a human emotion, a human need, a human experience, because all of us remember feeling like, wow, I wish there were an easier way to do certain things. Wouldn't it be easier to be able to do something continuously instead of having to press different buttons in different places? All of us kind of connect with that. So that's what Apple really did. And that was a company or a customer-centric signature story. A lot of people, if you think about motivational speakers, Les Brown has a signature story, Mamie Brown's Baby Boy. Today's MLK Day. There's something that you connect with Martin Luther King. Every time you think about Martin Luther King, I can almost guarantee you that most people think or connect the I Have a Dream speech. Now, while that wasn't a story in the essence of in Once Upon a Time format. It was a story because it cast a vision and it cast a dream. It cast a focus. It created a picture, a video in the minds of those that were listening. And that was a signature story. It's a signature story. Martin Luther King could have walked around for the next 10 years and told that story, and it would have resonated. And as a matter of fact, it did resonate, and it still does resonate, because that is a signature moment, a signature story that he told. And it connected with people. So is there something, is there a story, is there a moment, is there something that you can create that is going to connect with your audience? And can you repeat that either in the same format, or can you repeat little pieces of it in different places?
Wow. I hope if you're watching this live right now and you're tuning in live, I hope you are loving everything that Robert is saying. And let us know if you have any questions. If you are watching a replay of this, still let us know if you have any questions and drop them down into the comments. Now, we're talking about the importance of signature stories. Now, Robert, if I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I'm sold. Like, yeah, I need to tell a signature story. And let's say I have a high stakes presentation coming up, whether it's a meeting, maybe I'm doing a webinar, whatever it is, next Wednesday. How do I find one? Like, how do I get it?
Yeah. Well, ultimately, every presentation is about a result. You want to get people to move to a specific action. Either you want them to approve something for you to do it. Maybe it's a project, it's a new product, it's a new initiative that you're trying to launch, and you want them to approve something, or you want them to kind of get on board with you for something that you're already intending to do, right? And so there's always an end result to your presentation. So how do you get people to a place of from where they are to what you ultimately want them to begin doing? You've got to have a story that connects them to that, right? And so you've got to figure out, okay, I want to get them to here, but what is the thing that connects to them now? What resonates with them right now? What challenge are they having right now that I can connect to, or that I can tie in, so that they recognize the reason for moving in this direction, or moving towards this thing that I'm going to present to them. So that ultimately is a story. And so you can do that a lot of ways. You can bring yourself into that and say, you know what, I went through this and I've experienced this, and here's what the result of my experience was. But then I did something different, and that something different is this. And here is how I believe it's going to affect your customers or your organization. That's one way of approaching it. Or you could bring in somebody else. You can bring in the experience of someone else. You can talk about Jane, or you can talk about Zara, or John, or Kit, right? Or Mark, or Alice, or Alexa, or Kai, right? And you can, I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. If I'm not, then let me know. All right. You can bring in all of those. You can bring in those names and those experiences and share the challenges that they're having because of a gap, or because of something that was broken, something that's missing. And then you can share based on that, what's broken. You can now share the solution that you have that's going to help fix that challenge. So those are a couple of ways, easy ways, that you can begin bringing stories into your presentations, your high stakes presentations. But again, it really starts with figuring out where you want to end up, and then what the need is of that specific audience.
I love that. Do you see a lot of people not figuring out like what their main message or the ending, and they try to just jump into like random stories? Do you see that happening a lot?
All the time. All the time. And it's not just that they're not figuring it out. I think a lot of, especially in the sales world, right? There are a lot of people that are trained incorrectly, or they're trained to do certain things that don't necessarily connect with the customer. It's just about helping them move from one place to another in their script or in their presentation. For example, some companies, some sales trainers will say, hey, your job is to get the customer to say yes as many times as possible. So they'll ask them, you know, is your name is Robert, correct? Yeah. So I'll say yes. Okay. And they'll ask another question. They'll say, you've been living at this house for 5 years, correct? Yes. And so the idea there is that the more that I say yes to questions that are not even connected to anything, the more susceptible I will be to saying yes to your pitch. later on. But I'll give an example. So one day I'm sitting in my living room, and I'm in the state of Massachusetts at the time. And I'm at my house, and we're there for maybe about 3 years at this point. There's a knock at my door there, or the doorbell rings. I don't remember. Did I have a doorbell? Yes, I think I did. All right, let's go with the doorbell. The doorbell rings, and I go to the door and I open it up, and there's this guy outside, and he's got this big board with these carpet swatches. And he says, "Hey, my name's John. I'm selling carpet, and we have several different types of carpet. As a matter of fact, we're running a sale right now. If you get carpet today, you can get like a 25% discount. We've got Berber, we've got the fluffy shag kind, we've got all of these different kinds." And he goes through this litany of carpet types that he has. Spends about 5 or 6 minutes doing this. I don't know. I could have cut him off. I don't know why, but I let him go. So he goes through all of these different carpet types. And after he finishes, and he asks the question, "Are you interested in hearing more about the carpet?" I open my door and I show him the inside of my house, which is entirely hardwood. Right? So he comes to the door and he's sharing all of this stuff, and he has no idea what my needs are. He doesn't ask me what my needs are. He doesn't set the stage in any way that allows him to connect with me. Right now, I might have been considering carpet, but that's an expensive proposition. If you got an entire house full of hardwood, putting carpet on it, that's an expensive proposition. So you might as well just take care of the hardwood, right? And so if he would have looked in my house or asked me some questions around what my needs were, he could have tailored his story or his pitch or his presentation differently. Or at the very minimum, he could have wasted less time at my front door. So your story has got to be something that meets the needs of your audience, and you've got to ask some questions beforehand. But bottom line, your story you got to know who your audience is.
Yeah, I think we all know exactly what you mean. Where if we're talking to some salespeople, even who are just people working and they got complacent, it's like, okay, these are the things they're supposed to ask. It's on paper that they ask it, and they forget to listen and connect it to you, the human being. At the end of the day, I want to bring up some comments and questions from the audience. I'm going to first bring up a comment and question from Zahra. Thank you for tuning in. This is, she's planning and designing a SaaS product, and she's planning to connect the signature story there. Now, her question is, do you think it's better to start with the story or let it evolve after and during the product?
Okay. So here's what happens with a lot of people. They share the product and they share the information first before setting the stage or creating the context that allows me to see the need. So I'll go back to the story with the guy that was at the door. He started with the product. He started with the fact that they're having a sale. He started with the fact that if I make a decision right now, I would have access to a certain discount. But he didn't start with a story. I mean, so what if he had said, "Hey, Robert, listen, how long have you owned this house?" And I would have said 3 years. And he said, "Wow, that's awesome. So glad. Home ownership has really been a really good thing for many people over the last few years. As a matter of fact, I've talked to quite a few homeowners in this neighborhood. And one of the things that they've said to me is that they have seen, or they're looking for ways to really increase the value of their homes. As a matter of fact, Jane across the street, I was just there last week, and she was a customer of ours last year. And she decided that she was going to change 3 of the rooms in her house from hardwood or the tiled floors and put this specific type of carpet on the floor. And when she did that, we called her 2 months later, and she told us that they had done a market analysis on her house, and simply in putting the carpet in allowed her to improve the value of her home by $60,000. She created $60,000 of equity simply by adding the carpet into her house. And then he can ask me the question, what would you do if you had $60,000 extra in the value of your house? So you see, he creates a story, he creates a narrative, he creates something that connects with me, because I'm not so connected to the carpet. I'm connected to the value, or increasing the money, or increasing the equity of my home. And so if he starts with that story, now you can bring me to a place where you can help me make a better decision, or I can be more connected to what you're saying. So, and now you can bring up the product and say, hey, this is the same product that we installed over at her house. And that's how she made $60,000. That's a much better sell, or a much easier connection than just starting with the product.
Yeah, right. Again, it's going back to connecting with the endpoint, going back to being human at the end of the day. Well, Robert, that's great. So again, if you're watching live, what questions do you have? I want you to be very selfish, okay? Because you are taking the time to tune in to this. Robert is an amazing Actually, Robert, if they want to follow you and keep on staying in touch, where should they go?
I'm gonna send you to two places. I mean, my website. You can follow me. All of my social media is Robert Kennedy 3. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I'm not on Twitter a whole lot, but you can follow me there. But the biggest place that I want people to follow me right now is YouTube. So if you go to youtube.com/Robert Kennedy 3, I share a lot of tips there on storytelling and how to utilize technology, especially nowadays, inside of your storytelling. Share tips on public speaking, share tips on how to improve your business storytelling and become better at that.
I love it. So again, if you want to become a better leader, speaker, communicator, go give Robert a like and a subscribe to his YouTube channel. Because again, if you want to step up the game, you want to keep on filling your brain with knowledge. Go give his channel a subscribe. And of course, if you did not subscribe to the Boston Speaks channel, give us a subscribe as well.
That's right.
A little plug in there. Okay, Rob, I'm going to drop a question from Casey. And Casey, welcome. What if you don't know exactly who you are speaking to? Or no, it's a mixed crowd. If it's over Zoom, what do you have to say to this?
Oh, that's an easy one. You ask questions. You ask questions. A lot of times, people who are presenting information, a lot of times we've created the presentation and we come to the presentation and we just present it like slide 1 through 10 or slide 1 through 20. If you don't know who you're speaking to, there's nothing wrong with having an interactive presentation. You can just ask who is in the room. You can ask what they care about. You can ask what challenges they're having. And as they start feeding you this information, now you can create a narrative, or you can say, I see how this thing that I'm going to present to you fits your need. Right? The more that you do that, you can ask the question. And as a matter of fact, if you do that, it allows you to have to do less work. The audience is going to do a lot of the work for you because they're starting to share what their needs are. And here's what happens when you're in an audience that has a diverse group of people, and one person says, hey, this is what my challenge is, or this is what my need is. Somebody else hears it and they resonate with that. They're like, oh my gosh, I've been having the same struggle. I've been having the same trouble in my department. And they'll speak up and say, yeah, I've had that trouble too. And here's what here's what I would like to add to that. So your audience is now creating a dialogue or creating a discussion, having a conversation that you can then, with your presentation, respond to. Right. So now you're in the position of expert. Now you're in the position of saying, hey, not only do I have a product, but here is how I am clear that the product I have can solve your problem. You're not just presenting the solution, or you're not just presenting the product in a vacuum. You're now speaking to specific groups of people. It's like sitting in a room and somebody calls your name specifically. Kit, have you ever been in that situation? You're in a crowd or in your group, and maybe you're dozing off, or maybe you are not paying attention, or maybe something happens on your phone. You get a text and you get pulled into that. And then all of a sudden somebody says Kit, and you start paying attention differently, don't you? They speak to your need. So ask the question, Casey. Really good question.
I love that. Right? It's going back to asking questions, connecting with people in the audience. Right? I know a lot of speakers, whether they're on Zoom meetings or doing a presentation, they get stuck in their heads and they just want to say, okay, everything that they've present or came up with in practice, but they forget to be present in the moment. So I want to back things up. We've been talking a lot about storytelling, but one of the key things is when it comes to speaking, I of course, this is your bread and butter too. It's confidence, right?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, why is confidence so super important for leaders?
Well, people make decisions. If you remember, early on we said people make decisions a lot of times based on emotions, and their emotions aren't always what they feel. Okay, it's not, or not always based on their knowledge. Their emotions are based sometimes on what they see in you. As a leader, if you present something and you don't look like you're sure about what you're presenting, or you don't look passionate about it, why should I invest my risk, my time, and my effort into that if you're not even convinced by it? So, as a leader, it's important, if you want people to follow along, if you want people to join you, if you want to be able to influence people, your confidence, the way in which you present something, if you present something with conviction, if you present something in a compelling way, if you present something in a way that allows people to see, wow, this person has a personal experience with this product, with this service, with this idea, with this program, with this initiative. If people can see that, then the question that they need to ask themselves after that is, okay, if this person is speaking so highly about this, how I wonder how I would feel with if I were to use this thing. So confidence is critical. Confidence is crucial in helping people along that continuum to make towards decision making.
Well, I would love to hear from you. Since you've coached so many speakers, and this might be very simple, but what do you think a confident storyteller looks like, and what do they not look like? So, I want you to compare them, in
Yeah.
your opinion.
Well, that is we've all seen these. And we've heard these, that there are a lot of different subtle nuances, but a confident storyteller, number one, they're not afraid to look you in the eye. Eye contact is huge. The other side is you've seen the presenters that they may have good information. They may be talking well, but they're scared to look you in the eye. They're darting from the paper to the left, to the right, up, down, and they never really connect with the audience members. So eye contact is crucial. It's important. The other piece of this is really around your body language. Does your body language say, "Hey, I'm comfortable in this space. I'm present"? Are your shoulders back? Are you freely using your hands? Are you using larger gestures, or you're using alligator arms and T-Rex gestures where it's kind of close and your wrists are just kind of flapping around, right? What is it that you're doing? Do you seem like you own the space? Do you seem like you own the room? And when you use larger gestures, that's what is presented. That you're comfortable, you're owning the space, and you're almost embracing the audience with your larger gestures. If you're just kind of using your fingers and doing that stuff from the wrists, then there's something that you're hiding. Maybe you didn't do deodorant well that day, and you've got some some pit stains or something. Whatever it is, that body language and larger gestures really help you with owning that space and owning the audience. So those are two things. I don't know if you want me to share any more.
Well, no. First of all, I have to say, good thing we don't have to wear deodorant when we're doing stuff virtually nowadays. No, of course we still do, but it's
yeah.
Okay. What about this? How does storytelling change? Does it change over virtual versus in person?
Well, storytelling structure doesn't change. I mean, stories still, whatever storytelling type you're using, there are a lot of different storytelling types. You've got the hero's journey is one storytelling type, and that's the storytelling type where there's a hero and that hero leaves home on an adventure and they encounter a dragon or they encounter something that changes them, and they return home and they share that and they protect their community from anything based on what they've learned or the experiences that they've gone through. That's a storytelling type. There's another storytelling type called in media res, which means in the middle. So you literally start in the challenge, in the problem, and then you go back to the beginning of how you got to the problem in the first place, and then you navigate again through the problem to the resolution. That's another storytelling type. Spark lines, the mountain story. There are a lot of different storytelling types, but inside of all of those are four main elements. Inside of all of those, you're going to have setting, what's happening currently, what's happening in the world of your audience or the world of your characters. Characters are the second piece. You've got to have a character in every story because we're humans and we're telling stories to each other, which affect us, which share our experiences, or we share the experiences of others. So those are characters. The third piece, the third framework, or the third piece of a storytelling framework is the conflict. There's always got to be a conflict, something that's broken, a challenge, an obstacle, a barrier that's being navigated. Okay. And then after that, you've got to have that resolution, which allows people to know, hey, this is how we came through that conflict. This is how we navigated that challenge or that obstacle. So those are the four pieces. And those four pieces don't change whether I'm in person or online. We might be able to adjust how we tell it. You know, you can, as I shared with that one storytelling type in media res, within media res, you start with the conflict. You start with the what's broken. You start with the multi-car pileup on the highway. You start with the accident. You start with the challenge or the issue. And then you kind of go back to say, you know, this is the challenge. But then you go back to say, you know what, 6 months ago, here's what we were doing. And these are the things that we did. And then after 6 months, we started to experience this. And then you kind of bring us back into that conflict or into that challenge. And then you say, well, then after we recognize that, we did this. And here's what led us through that challenge. And here's what allowed us to improve our revenue or improve our business or improve our relationship or improve our life or improve our career making decisions or whatever it is. But those are the four elements that you've really got to put your story into or include in order to really make it a story, whether that's offline or online.
Yeah, it's key element to storytelling, right? It is a science and an art form to storytelling. So sometimes I know a lot of people wonder, well, how do I create stories? What's the structure? And you know, so Robert just broke it down for you. And you did. One thought came to me, Robert, and I think a lot of people ask this too. How long does it have to be? You know, if I'm giving an update at a meeting, I'm doing a webinar. Is it like, you know, people heard like 1 hour long stories and they get super bored. How long should the story be?
It doesn't have to be long. It could be 60 seconds. I mean, you tell different pieces of the story, or you tell the story in different ways, depending on your audience and depending on how much time you have. So for example, there's a story that I tell about when I learned how to ride a bicycle at the age of 8. Right. And I can tell that story in 15 minutes, or I can tell it in 60 seconds. Here's the quick version of it. When I was 8, I was in Montreal, Canada, and I didn't know how to ride a bicycle at the time. I was staying at a friend's house, and he had a bicycle. His sister had a bicycle. And I said, hey, I want to learn how to ride bicycle today. And I asked him how to do it. He pointed outside, and I saw some kids out there, and they were being pushed by their parents. Now, we didn't have parents at home that day. So we just decided that we're going to go out, and I was having some trouble riding, but I figured out for some reason that I could coast down the driveway, which then led to a garage underneath the house. And I did that a few times. And after a little while, I got my balance, and then I took it out onto the street, and there was a hill at the end of the street. And I took the bike and I pushed the bike down that hill, and I started to ride. I crashed at the bottom of the hill, but I was still able to learn how to ride that day quickly in less than 30 minutes. Now, sometimes, and here's that lesson inside of that, sometimes people will tell you that you can only do things a certain way. But you've got to be able to push back against status quo and challenge yourself and look for opportunities so that you too can begin riding your bicycle in a way that is maybe different than other people learned how to do theirs. So less than 60 seconds. But I'm telling a story, and I can share a lot of different lessons from that. As I can build excitement. I can talk about going down the hill on my wheels, my feet flying off the pedals. I can talk about down at the bottom of the hill, there was an intersection that I was coming up to and the danger of that. You know, I can talk about getting onto the street after being in the driveway and how I wiggled and wobbled and fell again and almost got discouraged. Right. So there are all of these different elements or additional elements or different pieces of the story that I can tell if I have a longer time, but I can tell the shorter version of it. And in order to make it more powerful, I've got to practice. What are the elements that are critical, crucial, and important? And what are the elements that I can take out depending on the point that I absolutely need to make?
Now, thank you for sharing that story. When you share that, of course, it depends on the situation, how much time that you have. But in how what kind of details should we tell people? Let's say you were talking about a bike. Should we go into, okay, this is the color of the bike, this is the XYZ? Like how should we know how much details to use or not use?
Again, it really depends on the result that you're after. What is the thing that is going to connect with your audience? Is your audience an audience that cares about color or details? Right? I did a conference last year, and in the conference, there were chief financial officers. My client, when they were hiring me for this event, they said, yeah, they're going to be CFOs, and they're very left brain, they're logical, they're reason based, and that's how they think. And so when I'm sharing with an audience of that type, I want to share structure, I want to share frameworks, I want to share certain details. I don't want to include that the wind was flying through my hair. All right. Even if I include that the wind was flying through my hair, I want to include that the wind was flying through my hair because I was writing at 23.5 miles per hour. Right. So again, the details are going to depend on the audience. You got to know who the audience is. I lost your audio a little bit.
Oh, thank you. Like I'm on multiple platforms, pressing mute and unmute at the same time.
Yep.
What about the word story? Should I use the word story as in, ladies and gentlemen, I have a quick story to tell you, or should I just dive into it?
From an efficiency standpoint, why do you need to tell me that you're going to tell me a story? If you don't tell me, does that mean that you're not going to tell me? Just dive into the story. It's kind of like saying, hey, I'm going to ask you a question. And then you ask the question, right? In some cases, if you are doing a story where it's interactive and you want people to prepare for something, if you've got little props that maybe you put under people's chairs and you want them to hold it up, then you can say, okay, we're going to go into a story right now. And as we go into the story, I want you to take out some props from underneath your chair. And when you hear this word, I want you to wave the clapper. Then that connects with the story. But if it's just a case where you're going to tell a story and it doesn't really call for interactivity or action or something from the audience to prepare them for, then just dive into the story.
Got it. Thank you for that. Again, if you are watching live, let us know, what kind of questions do you have? Maybe it's something coming up for you. Maybe it is the confidence piece. Well, what kind of questions do you have about how to tell better stories? Now, Robert, what is one thing, if after people are listening to this, after they watch this, what's one thing do you think that they can go do right now and become better storytellers?
One thing that everybody can do is simply look for one situation in your life. Think about one time that you have overcome anything. As I mentioned earlier, maybe it was that you studied for a test and you passed it. Maybe it was what I did and learned how to ride a bicycle in one afternoon or in less than 30 minutes. What is the thing in your life? What is the experience in your life that represents a challenge that you have overcome? And if you can figure out at least one of those, then I would write it down. And then you can even detail out what is the setting, character, conflict, and resolution in this story. Figure out what that story is, and then learn how to tell it. One of the best ways to be confident in things is confidence is not the switch that you turn on and off. Confidence comes through repetition. And so once you figure out a story that you want to share, then begin sharing it. Go live. Create a video, write a blog post, and then share that blog post or say it out loud. Get on a podcast, do something with it so that you can practice that story. And as you become more comfortable with that story, then branch out and start looking for other stories in your life or in the lives of others that you can begin to use.
Love it. Now, Robert, can you remind people again, where should they follow you? And actually, are you working on any special projects coming up so far?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. You can follow me again on all of my social media at Robert Kennedy 3, but I'm specifically asking people to follow me right now on YouTube. So go to youtube.com/Robert Kennedy 3. Right now, as I just mentioned, one of the best ways to improve your storytelling is by just doing it over and over. And one of the ways that I recommend people do it is online, is by doing video, is by doing live streaming. And so live streaming is something that's hot right now. And there are a lot of people live streaming, but you want to figure out how to make your story cut through the noise. So in a week, we're actually launching something called the Live Stream Confidence Challenge. And I'd love to invite anyone that's on the show or that's listening to join us for that Live Stream Confidence Challenge. It's a 5-day challenge. It's free, no cost to join. It's every evening at 6 p.m. And we're going to be having a great time. There are prizes that I'd share with people. You're going to, I guarantee you that if you're a part of that challenge, you won't be the same person that you were when you went in. So you can go to livestreamconfidencechallenge.com to register for that challenge. That's livestreamconfidencechallenge.com. And if you need that, then I can share that information with you, Kit, and people can join us for that. We're going to be giving away some equipment. We're going to be doing Amazon gift cards. Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, live streaming is actually one of the best ways to practice your storytelling, because you have an audience, or we can have an audience of just, of course, just by yourself, of 1 of 10. But now in this virtual age, you have to get used to talking to the camera and getting used to the tech side of things. So I would highly recommend, go and take Robert's challenge. You need to up your live streaming. If not now, you have to later. It's 2021 now. We know video is going up, and up, even when COVID is going to be over. Now, Robert, usually what I do at the end of the interviews is my favorite part. I have our speakers give a 1-minute message, okay, on the topic. So I'm priming Robert's mind right now. So what do you think is your 1-minute message about how to tell better stories?
Well, one of the things that I share with everybody, especially people that are in my community, the Storytellers Growth Lab, one of the things that I share with most people is that each of us has this experience called life. And a lot of times we're not confident enough to tell it. We don't think that our stories matter. We don't think that our stories are going to make a difference for somebody else. But I like to say to my Storyteller Growth Lab people, I like to say to people that I meet that your story deserves a stage. We kind of think that our stories are things that we need to keep to ourselves, or that we tell maybe to our families or people that are close to us. But the thing is, your story is built to make a difference for somebody else. The reason that you go through experiences is because somebody else is already looking for you. They're already looking at you. They're already looking at how you're operating, how you're navigating, and how you're dealing with life. And so when you figure out your way, or you navigate your way through certain challenges, they then want that answer. They want to know how you were feeling and what you did in order to navigate through that. So tell that story. Tell the intimate details of that story. Tell how you made it through, so that you can allow somebody else to maybe transform their lives, or even give them the courage to move on one more step. You've got to tell your story. Your story deserves a stage.
Wow. So listen up, ladies and gentlemen. You have to tell your story. You have a story inside of you, even if you don't tell stories so often now, right? What's one of the best ways to do it? Just like what Robert is saying, you have to tell stories. You don't have to be good at it at first. Just tell them, right? You have to get your reps in. Now, if you are still listening to this, then that means becoming a better storyteller, becoming a better communicator, and becoming a better leader is important to you. One of the best things that you can do is take the knowledge that you've gained today and put it into action. So I definitely want you to go follow Robert on his YouTube channel. Now, if you have not had a chance to subscribe to the Boston Speaks channel yet, press subscribe, because we always interview amazing individuals just like Robert. I'm going to bring up Robert one last time as we are going to go for the day. Robert, thank you so much for being here with us.
Listen, I appreciate you, y'all. I mean, he's been sharing me with you, but if you have not yet followed Kit, Kit is an amazing, inspiring, influential person. So really just follow him, follow his journey, because he's got great tips, great value, and you're going to learn so much just from hanging out with Kit. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and hang out with you today, brother.
Hey, thank you so much. And thank you to the audience for tuning in live or watching the replay. Have a great day, everyone. Take